key theme of this parable about the wise and foolish virgins. The parable opens itself to many interpretations, but we have to be careful which ones we choose. Back in the days, when only young men prepared for ministry, a certain theological college principal was preaching on this parable in the chapel. When he reached the climax of his message, he was really going for it. When he reached the climax of his message, he yelled to his students, "Young men, tell me, would you rather be in the light with the wise virgins or in the dark with the foolish virgins?" And apparently, yes, there was so much laughter that day in the chapel, that chapel was dismissed early. We need to understand chapter 25 in general, I guess. In chapter 25, we're going to get 3 stories over the next 3 weeks. This is the first one this week. Jesus is not speaking to his opponents any longer, and not even to the crowd in general, but to all who are disciples and who want to be his disciples. And so these 3 parables, one for each of the last 3 weeks of the year before we hit Advent, are what we'll hear over the next few weeks. And Matthew sets these 3 parables in the context of the future coming of the Son of Man, the one who comes to consummate the kingdom of God on earth. And today's parable is about being alert and ready. Next Sunday, we'll take up the theme of being diligent and trustworthy, what it means to be servants or stewards of the kingdom, to be ready to give an account. Luckily, Lauren will be on next week, and I don't have to wrestle with the parable of the talents. Tricky passage. And the third Sunday after that will feature the king who comes incognito and judges the nations and judges those who show practical love to the needy folk all around. So let's think today of this parable of 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins, or young women, or maidens, as it might also be translated. It's a story which has become the subject for countless sermons, for art, some classic music, poems, and even a ballet. In the parable, as Jesus told it, we're in a different culture altogether. The marriage customs were exceedingly different from ours today. Today we expect bridesmaids to attend to the bride, not 10 maids attending the bridegroom. What's more, we announce a set date and time for the wedding, or we're supposed to, and as long as the bride does not overstep the bounds of decorum and arrive too late, we generally stick to the approved and agreed time. You don't want to be the minister in a church where you have 2 or 3 weddings on a Saturday and you've got them carefully planned and one bride gets there late, mucks up everybody's day. Evidently, however, the culture where Jesus lived at that time, the time was not specified on the wedding invitation. Some biblical commentators have even suggested that it was actually considered a smart trick to fool the guests by arriving at an unexpected hour. Hence, in the parable, the bridegroom's party chooses to arrive at midnight to see if he can catch some folks unprepared. And I think that's one cultural custom that we should never adopt. The nerves of the bride's parents probably wouldn't stretch as far as that, waiting for the person to arrive. And they might snap past breaking point. It'd probably spawn some reality TV shows, I suppose. There is that upside. Anyway, these days, the maidens wait for the arrival of the bride and escort her. In Jesus' time, the bridegroom was met by the maidens with their lamps shining to escort the bridegroom into the wedding ceremony and the feast. In Jesus' parable, 5 girls neglected to have a reserve supply of oil And they waited a long time. Their lamps burned low, began to smoulder. They tried to borrow some oil from the other 5. No deal. At that critical moment, the bridegroom arrived. The wise maidens, who had backup oil, went into the feast with the bridegroom. The other 5, after rushing out to buy more, arrived back at the reception centre to find the door firmly shut against them. In a panic, they knocked on the door and cried, "Sir, sir, please open the door for us." However, the voice inside replied, "Go away, I don't know you." They'd missed their opportunity. It sounds somewhat hard-hearted, all very final. Jesus meant it to be so. I think he's telling us that we must make the most of our opportunities and always be ready to welcome him. If we miss the moment, we may well miss out altogether. And the story reminds me again that God's timetable is not our timetable. We'd like to have God who fits in with our wants, one who's always on time for us. And if, like some of us, you believe that punctuality is next to godliness and you are always early, then this whole timing thing is a real problem. It's been said that punctual people are the great time wasters of the world, because we're always there early waiting for everyone else to come. God's timing is not our timing. And I've known some tetchy churchgoers who complain, "Where is God in today's affairs? What's he doing? We need the help of God right now. Why doesn't he show his love? Why won't he give us a hand when we want it most? Why keep us waiting all the time?" It's enough to get weary. The absence of God may seem prolonged indeed. It's an easy thing to grow careless and allow our lamp of faith to grow dim. We give up supplementing our supply with new reserves. We may become negligent, apathetic, even faithless. We pastors meet many people who complain about God's tardiness. Some will tell us, "Well, that's it. I gave him the best years of my life, and what has he done for me? Where was he when I desperately waited for him to come to my side?" And we notice the light of such people growing dim. They're prone to start complaining about a lot of things in the church. Nothing seems right in their eyes. Before long, they're just a smouldering wick, giving off a nasty, disgruntled odour. Will they fall asleep and miss out on the moment when the bridegroom comes with abundant blessings at the marriage feast? It's an all too familiar story for many elders and ministers. Some cannot tolerate God having a different timetable to theirs. Keep awake then, for you never know the day or the hour. So how do we top up our oil supply? How can we become numbered among the wise who are ready whenever the Son of Man comes to us? One thing we know is not on. We cannot borrow it from our fellow Christians. We can be encouraged by others. We may be inspired by their example, but we can't borrow their faith. Which puts me in mind of an incident just last night, when my friend Tony Goodluck was asked, "Tony, do you want a pancake?" And he said to someone, "No, you have one for me." Tony being very well behaved, and, not having a pancake with the ice cream on it. Unfortunately, as Tony well knows, no one can eat your pancakes for you. You've got to eat your own pancakes. You've got to top up your own oil. You've got to have your own faith. we need to seek for ourselves all the opportunities that we can to keep our faith alive and growing. There are some time-honoured ways of doing this. The good oil can be found in worship and in the reading of the Scriptures. Some will be found in Bible study and prayer groups. Our stock will be replenished in our private devotional life. And when you get encouraged to just pause for a moment each week and have a moment of prayer. The prayer of those who love the Lord will carry us on. And other oil comes our way as we serve Christ in the rough and tumble of our daily life. Yet there are other less recognised sources of oil for the lamp of faith. Some of us have received oil from the most unexpected places. Sometimes it flows from critics and unbelievers. Such unlikely folk can contribute to the resources of our faith. Sometimes our oil is replenished in the giving of ourselves to those in need without any thought of reward. We unselfishly care for them, and to our great surprise, discover the oil of happiness rising up within our own souls. Perhaps you've had that experience. It's in giving that we receive. We find ourselves spiritually enriched by those whom we set out to serve with no thought of reward. And take note of this, for I know it's true. On occasions, your oil will be replenished when you undertake some task which you strongly dislike. Those times when you loyally, yet reluctantly, perform some service for Christ, which you find personally frustrating or distasteful. An example comes to mind from years ago, from the writings of Joy Davidman, who married the English scholar and author C.S. Lewis. Remember the film Shadowland? You might have seen that film. Davidman was at her typewriter, busy at writing an article about loving one's neighbour. The telephone rang. Muttering words that were probably censorable, she broke off in mid-sentence. The caller was the neighbourhood nuisance, a bitter woman who'd driven away her husband, children, friends and neighbours. Joy was the only person who had not cut her off totally. She later wrote, "You think of all the times you've tried in vain to tell her of God and repentance and love, only to be jeered at as a credulous fool. You know, all you'll get this time is a denunciation of other people and a series of small digs at yourself." But Joy went and visited the sour neighbour. She came back with the old lady's poison darts sticking to your hind. Yet, nevertheless, deep inside you, there's a small, bright glow. If you take a good look at the brightness, you will recognize it for the love of God, your love for Him and His for you, sweeter than wine and brighter than the sun. For one moment you forget self and its desires and rights. You gave a scrap of your life away, and in return, you get this incredible candle in the heart. So unexpected love, such a strange source for the good oil. Get the oil in my lamp, keep me burning. I guess that story from Joy Davidman can also hint at the guise of the bridegroom in Jesus' parable. Perhaps sometimes the bridegroom, the Son of Man, comes to us in the form of a cantankerous neighbour or a work colleague. But we'll leave that thought for a couple of weeks and we'll come back to that in a while. The glory belongs to God is the basic theme of this story. Focus on the main frame. Oil. Let's stick with oil and the wise and foolish virgins, and most of all, on the bridegroom. When the oil tank is regularly topped up, the lamp glows warmly. They glow not just for our own satisfaction, but for the sake of those around us and to the glory of the bridegroom. Then it is that we can indeed recognize the privilege and honour that is ours. Jesus once expressed it this way: let your light so shine before all people that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. That's what it's all about. Not our glory, but God's. That is brilliant. That is truly awesome. And if you don't like this story of the bridesmaids, we have the wonderful story from Joshua. Choose this day whom you will serve. It rings down the ages like a call to arms, a call to remind us whose we are. And the people respond, we will serve the Lord. In that version you get it 3 times. There's no mistaking. Choose who you will serve. We will serve the Lord. And it's not a secret ballot, as important as secret ballots are. It's a public declaration. Everybody is standing there and says, together, we will serve the Lord. Everybody has to know who you're voting for. It may be that faith is a personal choice, but it's not a private choice. There are consequences to our decision. Choose this day who you will serve. It's a personal choice, but it's not private. You have to let it be known who you have decided to follow. And then you need the oil to be topped up daily, because we all run low on oil at times. Give me oil in my lamp. Keep me burning, burning, burning.